Now we have time for a couple of questions. Mr. Johnny Beale from BBC.
Thank you. If I could ask Defence Secretary Healey, first of all, sorry, Jonathan Beale, BBC. If I could ask you, sir, first of all, I think the Secretary-General said that at the start of today's meeting, 6 NATO countries were going to join the Pearl initiative, which is essentially Europe buying US military weapons to supply to Ukraine. That's grown to, I think, he said, 16 countries. But the UK isn't one of those countries. Now, Pete Hegseth, the US Defence Secretary, has described countries that aren't going to do that as freeloaders, or indicated they are freeloaders. So I just wanted to know, I'm not aware that the UK is part of that initiative. Are you going to be taking part in that initiative? I could ask Ukraine's Defence Minister, you've no doubt met with Pete Hegseth. Are you any clearer as to whether the US is ready to supply Ukraine with Tomahawk cruise missiles? You made clear in your opening remarks that you wanted long-range weapons, and you made clear which weapons those are. Those are Tomahawk cruise missiles. Did you get any indication from the US that they are ready to supply those weapons? And finally, if I could ask you, Minister Pistorius, do you sense a change in rhetoric of the US? Do you think that, given where we were at the start with the first meeting with Defence Secretary Hegseth, where he was making clear that this was Europe's problem, that the US is now in a different place? And I think he said, Pete Hegseth, the US is ready to impose costs on Russia for its continued aggression. If we must take this step, the US stands ready to do our part that only the US can do. So do you think there has been a change? Thank you.
Thank you. Shall I go first?
Please, go ahead.
Pearl is one way of Ukraine's strongest allies helping to meet their military needs. We in the UK are looking hard at the Pearl programme. We're looking hard at that with other European nations and nations beyond Europe. But we as a country are spending more on military aid to support Ukraine this year than ever before. We are meeting the requirements that Ukraine has said to us they need, and we, in many cases, are doing things that only the UK is doing and funding.
So are you going to join the Pearl scheme?
We're looking at the potential for the Pearl scheme. We're looking hard at that as a new mechanism, and we're looking at that with other European allies and nations within the UDCG beyond Europe. But we are, this year, spending the highest level of British military support on aid for Ukraine at £4.5 billion.
So we discussed today successful results of deep strike operations, which Ukraine provide by our own drones, deep strike drones, and actually we count that we destroyed 20% of refineries on Russian territory, and it brings them to the deficit of gas and gasoline on their gasoline stations. We may see the lines of cars there in Russia, and we will continue such operations. It's absolutely operations in the deep of territory of Russia, directed against of the refineries, against of the infrastructure, military infrastructure, which brings additional money and brings logistics to support war in Ukraine. So it's very, I would say, humanity operations, because we are very precise in our operations and very carefully looks and plan these operations. But it's not enough to create pressure on Russia to stop this war, to bring Putin to the negotiation table. We need to do more, and it should be like a combination of sanctions, of deep strike attacks, of pressure on the front line. So deep strike attacks should be combined with deep strike weaponry, missiles of our partners. We discuss all types of deep strike missiles, but I think that concrete names and concrete data will announce presidents. So President of Ukraine and President of United States answering your question, or leaders of other countries if it will be other partners who will supply to Ukraine deep strike missiles for our operations to continue and increase pressure on Russia. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I think the baseline of the remarks of Pete Hegseth remains the same since the beginning in February, but still I heard, as you did, these last words of his sentence with very much interest and attention too. And I would read in that kind of change of perspective and approach, but not more for the moment. I can't interpret really what he did mean.
Thomas Gutschka, FAZ.
Thanks a lot for the question. First one,